to start. It is September 13th, it's 2:05. We welcome you guys to today's Redevelopment Agency Board meeting. To keep everybody healthy and safe, we continue to host hybrid RDA meetings. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the City Council's agenda page, Facebook, YouTube, or SLC TV. We hope you'll continue to join us in whichever manner you feel most comfortable. We're in agenda item A, which is comments, and so we begin our meeting with comments to the board. I'd like to remind you that written comments may be submitted to RDA offices via mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114, or emailing us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or by calling our 24-hour phone comment line at 801-535-7654. We are accepting your comments in person and through WebEx. And for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. I want to mention our rules of the quorum as well. These are guidelines to help our meeting progress in an orderly, civil, efficient way. We want to give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of the quorum begin from the moment you arrive in person or into our virtual meeting. The RDA board respects all points of view, and we welcome new insights. Please be respectful. Avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. If you violate this rule, your line will be muted and you will be asked to stop. If you feel you need to use profanity or disrespectful remarks to express your point, you're welcome to email board members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request your name during the WebEx registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of the quorum. If your name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will make contact with you to gather that information. For those joining in WebEx, please monitor your chat in case we try to reach you. Scott Corpani from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate on any questions with your commenting registration. Staff is handling a number of tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal changes to your registration. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment. We will call names of people joining on WebEx and in person based on the order of registration or received comment cards. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will announce your name. For people in WebEx, she will unmute your line and you may begin. For people in person, please step up to the podium, and if you have a mask, please feel free to remove it before making a comment. Once you begin, please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. We will now open our general comment period. Taylor, please start with the first comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It looks like there is no one registered for general comment.
All right. We're moving on to item 1. Sorry, we did that. So thank you, Taylor, for that. And we are now at the public. Sorry, are there any other comments in person? Okay, I don't see anybody. We are now at the public hearing portion of our agenda. We only have one public hearing item, B1 resolution, RDA budget amendment number 1 for fiscal year 2022-23. The same rules of the quorum applies to our public hearing portion. Now, before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Ben Lutke, a council staff policy analyst, to give a short introduction.
There are 2 items in RDA budget amendment number 1. The total expenditure is $4.9 million. The 2 items are $1 million of additional funding to cover cost increases for the Marmalade Plaza project, and $3.9 million to purchase parcels in Station Center. The updated staff report and the administration's transmittal are available in today's meeting packet, and the briefing on this item is after the minutes on the agenda.
Thank you, Ben. Taylor, please start with our first public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is no one here for this item either.
Right, well, thank you very much. So we are at item B1, the resolution, RDA budget amendment number 1. And for some reason, I have it listed twice. Ben, I have it listed twice.
I'm happy to do it twice, but I think you only need to do it once.
Maybe we should, maybe we give some time to Danny and RDA staff. I'm not sure, Jen, what's happening because I have it twice. I have it here and then I have it here.
So the public hearing, the public hearing, since no one's here to speak, you could close the public hearing.
All right.
And then after the minutes, we would do the briefing, and I have an update for the board on it.
Do we need a motion to close the public hearing? Madam Chair, I move that we close the public hearing for item B1.
Second.
Right, so I have a motion to close the public hearing by Board Member Mano and seconded by Board Member Fowler. I'm going to roll call. Petro,
Yes.
Dugan,
Yes.
Mano,
Yes.
Pui,
Yes.
Wharton, Fowler,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that portion is closed. We're moving on to C. And we're going to do the approval of minutes for Tuesday, October 2nd, 2021. I need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for Tuesday, October 12, 2021.
Second.
Right, I have a motion by Board Member Pui and seconded by Board Member Wharton. I'm going to roll call. I'm going to start with Fowler,
Yes.
Wharton,
Yes.
Pui,
Yes.
Mano,
Yes.
Dugan,
Yes.
Petro,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, so we are on agenda item number 2, and now we're back at the table with Ben, with Danny Walls, Aaron, and Mary Beth, and Mike Burns. The floor is yours.
So the update since the first briefing is the $1 million of additional funding to cover the cost increases of Marmalade Plaza. This is a new public open space. It was proposed by the administration to pull funding from the revolving loan fund, $720,000, and from the Arctic Court infill home. This would be a new single-family home, and that would be $280,000. So $1 million total. And the board had asked at the last briefing, could park impact fees be used instead of those other funding sources, which is a way for the council and the RDA board, wearing different hats, to use the city and the RDA financial tools together for one project. RDA staff checked with the Public Lands Department and reviewed the city's impact fee plan. The answer is yes. The project is fully eligible for parks impact fees. So if the board is still interested, you have the option to use parks impact fees, $1 million, to cover the expected cost increases. The available to spend balance of parks impact fees is $12.5 million, and this does include the parks impact fees that were spent in CIP. Now, because...
Ben, sorry, Madam Chair,
Yes.
when you say this does include what we spent in CIP, that means that has already been taken out. So this balance of 12 million is what we have with everything else sort of allocated and out there in all of our wishes.
Correct.
Okay.
Good clarification.
The checkbook is updated.
The checkbook is updated. It's balanced at this point.
Something that I'm not good at. So.
Now, an important point is because of the timing of this budget amendment and that the project has already gone out to bid, the administration does need sufficient budget to fully fund the project cost in order to sign the contract from the responsive bid. So parks impact fees would need to be in a general fund budget amendment that comes to the council. And it would also need to be in an RDA budget amendment to receive those parks impact fees from the general fund and to authorize the expenditure. So if the board wanted to go ahead with the parks impact fee approach, then you could approve today the recommended funding from the administration, from the revolving loan fund and the Arctic Court, and then in the next budget amendment for the council, we would have the impact fees sent to the RDA, And then in the next RDA budget amendment, we would swap the funding sources. This would allow the bid to move forward based on the construction timing and to do the funding source. So just wanted to be clear that you'd see this item a couple more times.
Ben, sorry, Madam Chair,
Go
may I
ahead.
interrupt again? And from a legal standpoint, using impact fees, we can use impact fees to reimburse essentially what we're doing.
And
I just didn't know that we could do that with impact fees.
I don't think it would be so much a reimbursement as a swapping of the budget. The dollars wouldn't necessarily go out between the budget amendment steps, but we would need the budget, the full budget approved for the contract to be signed.
Got it. So we're encumbering the contract essentially, and then figuring out where the money comes from afterwards.
Yep.
Questions? Any other questions?
And we can make these as two motions, a motion on the Marmalade funding and on the Depot District, two separate motions.
Correct. The administration is requesting approval of both items today. You can certainly vote on them separately.
Okay.
There's also a policy question about the Arctic Court, the home. If the board wanted to continue discussion about the potential development of that site. Some members have mentioned the Community Land Trust, maybe an accessory dwelling unit could be put on the property, and how much additional funding would be needed. There's currently $280,000 for developing that home.
So I did want to ask that question, like what can we do to, I know it's already kind of a smallish lot, because I think it was subdivided from the house on Arctic Court, or maybe, but that might have been because those lots were combined. But anyway, point is, it's not very big. But what can we do to maximize that space? I feel like you could fit two smallish homes on it.
You're right, it has been subdivided. It is a fairly small lot. We do have plans already drawn up that have been already approved by the Historic Landmarks Commission. So as a board, what we would do regardless of this action here today, we would obviously need additional funds to move that project forward. So we would come back to you with that request either in a later budget amendment or next fiscal year. And then the plan would be, once those funds are secured, to move forward with building the house as designed and put it out for development.
Okay, and there's no more money left from that RDA area, right?
No, that's
like long gone.
this action here is essentially scraping the bucket of West Capitol Hill and wrapping it up.
Okay. We did a lot of scraping. I feel like we've been scraping.
It's been some good
since I got
scraping,
here
yes.
on that one. So, okay, thank you.
So, go ahead. Dr. Manuel.
I can
go
wait.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I think we should move forward with approving this budget amendment so that plaza could go forward. I like the idea of swapping it out for the impact fees. It's annoying that it's going to be 3 steps officially, but whatever. I guess that's what we have to do. I still think that the Arctic Court project would be a really good opportunity for us to not actually build the house and deal with all of the cost overruns, but to use the land put the land out for an RFP to similar to what we did with that, I think it was 1084 Jefferson or whatever, 9 something Jefferson Street. But not just for somebody that wants to build a house and say, here's free land, but somebody that wants to build a house, maybe we could ask them to demonstrate sort of a financial, like they could almost afford to build their own house, but they can't quite, but also require that they have an ADU or a second unit that is deed restricted for affordable for a certain number of years. And that way we don't actually have to put any more money in, we just offer the land out to somebody that can build it themselves and they can, So I think we're still looking for a place for this $280,000 to go, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find that. But I think that money seems much less restricted than impact fees would be. So I do like still moving around the impact fees and figuring out another place for this. But I don't personally think it should be an Arctic Court. I think that a private owner or developer can pull off that project faster than we'd be able to, and we could still get public benefits from that. But that's just my thought, and it certainly would need staff input as to whether or not that's feasible.
It's a good idea. And I see Danny taking notes.
Yeah, honestly, we have not gotten to start looking at the specifics of that disposition of property. Right now, as much as identifying that pot of funds is an available source for finishing Marmalade Plaza, our intention is when we come back and request those funds to have additional information on what that proposed use would be, the process, and then even how we could incorporate affordability in that. So
Just seems
this
like,
is good information to
yeah,
have.
it just seems like your time is probably better spent on other things than managing the construction, being a construction manager for a small house, when I think we could get somebody else to do that and still get an affordable unit out of it or something like that.
Anybody else? Any other comments? I have a question, Danny. So when this all happens, if the board says yes to using impact fees, and then that releases $1 million, correct, back to the RDA budget, and do you have plans for that? Are those restricted, that $1 million?
So the $1 million is in two parts. The $280,000 for the Arctic Court single-family home we've been discussing, which I think that's a future discussion about how to best use those funds. The other $720,000 is proposed to come from the revolving loan fund.
Okay.
So after the budget amendment steps, it would go back to the revolving loan fund to be available for future loans.
Future loans?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Yep. All right. So we do need to take a vote on this.
A vote is requested on this item, and then there's a second item for the station center property purchase. If you want to do the vote first, then I can give an update on that, whichever you prefer.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the use of impact fees for the Marmalade. No. Sorry.
You want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the use of the $1 million from those two separate sources with the intent that we will switch it to impact fees later.
Yep.
Second.
Well, there you go. We have a motion by Board Director Mano and seconded by Board Director Dugan, as said by Board Director Mano. So I'm going to roll call this. Petro.
Yes.
Dugan.
Yes.
Mano.
Yes.
Pui.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that one passes unanimously. And now we're going to our second topic in the same item about Station Center.
So this is a request for $3.9 million, and the funding has already been appropriated by the board for a different use in Station Center. That is improvements to the public right-of-way for new streets, amenities on a festival street, and upgraded utilities. Now, the proposal is to take that funding and instead use it for purchasing 3 parcels. And I think Scott or Taylor have an updated map of Station Center to help orient which parcels we're talking about. It's also in the staff report on page 2. While that's being pulled up, the reason we're able to talk about this in the public session is because the parcels are already under contract with the state for purchase. There we go. So the parcels that we're discussing are in development site number 4. This is at the corner of 300 South and 500 West, and it's the 3 parcels that have the diagonal hash marks. And as you can see, a couple of those parcels are needed to construct a new city street.
Okay.
The final designs for Station Center are not yet available, but based on the current designs, I think they're about 70% complete. The total estimated cost for all of the upgrades in the public right-of-way is $15 million. So $15 million is the need. There's $9.5 million that's already been appropriated for it. And using $3.9 million from that source for purchasing these parcels would further reduce it to about $5.5 million. So there would then be a $10 million funding gap. And it's been previously discussed that the sale of some or all of the RDA property in Station Center, the proceeds could be used to fill that funding gap. What is done with the proceeds is a decision for the board. Board members have previously discussed an interest in some of Station Center being a separate RFP for smaller sites, for smaller firms to have access to. I don't know if there's board members that wanted to continue that point of discussion today. Again, the administration requested a vote on this item today.
Open for discussion for directors.
I guess I'd just ask for feedback on that idea. I would still like it to be a separate RFP, but is there any, Danny, is there a reason not to do that from your perspective?
I think that comes down to what we're working on right now, what those conversations have been to date as part of working with the University of Utah on a potential partnership, and then also as far as what the agency's goals are for development of that property. And the easy answer is we have not figured out yet what the overall disposition strategy would be, but we do anticipate that there would be parcels split up and put out for different types of development. The scale and scope of those is not known yet until we really have a clear understanding of what we're looking to build there, and it is part of our overall goals and objectives. So we share in that desire. That's our plan. We're not necessarily looking to put it out as part of one large parcel of development, but rather looking at opportunities for how that could be split and provided as smaller pieces that are available for different types of development. What that exact structure is right now, though, we're not entirely sure.
Okay.
I guess I'm comfortable voting on it and approving that. And just signaling that that's still what I would like. I don't know if that's what the rest of the board would like either, but I'm still interested in that. And so hopefully as those discussions materialize and like I've said before, I think doing one giant building or one giant development, I don't like what that does for a few reasons, but if it's ever going to happen, a partner like the University of Utah seems like the appropriate master developer to partner with. So, I think I don't want to I think I'm ready to move forward.
Okay.
I think on behalf of staff, if I may respond to that directly, staff shares that desire and concern. We've heard that from the board. We understand that that's the preference and the direction you'd like us to look at. Even in our conversations with a larger developer, we were still incorporating the idea of splitting pieces off for development. So that is in response not just to what we see as the best way to develop this, but in response to your concerns and others from the board of how to build this into something that's really impactful in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think a lot of us from what I heard too are in that we have that desire as well to see, and so I think it's still preliminary, like Danny said, but it's going forward with that in mind. So, so stay tuned. Board Director Dugan, do you have any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, so anybody ready to make a motion for this request?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve this budget amendment.
Second.
All right, I have motion by Board Member Mano, seconded by Board Member Fowler. I'm going to roll call. Petro.
Yes.
Dugan.
Yes.
Mano.
Yes.
Hoy.
Yes.
Wharton.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and that passes unanimously as well. So thank you. We're moving on to item number 3, which is a seller's note and gap loan for Spark Development at 1500 West North Temple. At the table, we have Allison Rowland, Corinne Piazza, Kate Werrett, and Danny Walls to tell us about this request.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. So as you mentioned, this is the seller's note and gap loan discussion for Spark at 1500 West North Temple. In this briefing, you'll consider adding a total of $8 million in financing for Brenshore Development for their Spark project. It's a mixed-use, mixed-income project that I believe you're all familiar with. It's at the site of the former Overnighter Hotel. The RDA staff proposes a $4 million seller's note, which most of the board members have discussed in the past, but I think some of you newer ones have not. It would allow Brenshore to repay the RDA for the original purchase price of the land over 30 years at 1.25% interest. The remaining $4 million would take the form of an emergency gap loan, which is to reflect the construction cost increases that we all know about, But in this case, they're estimated to raise project costs from about $70 million to $93 million. This would be a 30-year emergency gap loan at 2% interest. And it could be drawn from available amounts in several existing RDA funds. So I'm sure Corinne and Kate will speak about this more in a minute. I just want to point out there are two potential board actions today. One is to provide the final approval for the $4 million seller's note, and there's a motion sheet for that in your packets. And the second would be to straw poll the first step of the approval of the GAP loan proposal, which would concentrate funds from different RDA accounts to reach that $4 million to be able to loan it. The RDA staff could then include that $4 million in an RDA budget amendment number 2 for the October meeting and have it available for potential adoption in the November meeting. And this would ensure that the funds are available by the project's planned closing in December. Finally, the RDA Finance Committee reviewed the terms of both the seller's note and the GAP loan and unanimously approved them both. So I'll turn it over to Corinne and Kate.
Great, thank you so much, Allison. We have a really brief presentation for you. The majority of the board members have seen it, but not everyone, and of course it's for the public as well. And I wanted to note that we do have Brinshore Development here for questions if you're interested. Whitney Weller, Senior Vice President, it should be online, and David Brent, Principal's with us in the room as well. So I will hand it off to Kate to get started.
Great, thank you. As was mentioned, this project is located at 1500 West North Temple. Taylor, if you want to go to the next slide. Here we have a vicinity map that shows you that location within the North Temple project area. This parcel is just over 2 acres, which makes it a Tier 1 parcel, and it was decided by the city master plan that this would be an ideal spot for a signature transit-oriented development. I love that the city's master plan stated that about this location. Due to that, the RDA put out in 2018 an RFP for different development opportunities, and Brinshore was selected based on their plans and the development experience that was had within their team. Just as some background, Brinshore is one of the largest affordable housing developers in the country. They have built over 7,000 units of housing, and their focus is on strengthening neighborhoods. For this particular project, it is a predominantly female-led team, so that's exciting. They also have over 50% of their development staff is also female. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we're looking at today is we're going to go through high level of the background of the Spark project, its funding sources, the affordable components of it, and the public benefits that we have. Along with that, we'll talk about the RDA contributions to the project, and we'll look at finalizing those financing terms and then the additional gap financing that is needed here. That main objective of looking at what is needed in those additional funding areas is what we hope to have your approval on today. Due to the unprecedented inflation and shipping and labor costs, they do have that gap that we'd like to talk about. Let's go to the next slide. Here we have that project timeline. You can see in 2017 that pristine location for a transit-oriented development was acquired and put out for RFP the next year, with it being awarded to Brinshore, with the first NOFA that they received being awarded that same year, and then the following year they received an additional NOFA, or Housing Development Loan Program funding. So they have received two of these loans, been awarded 2 of those loans, and they've also received over they've been awarded over $42 million in LIHTC funding, which was awarded in 2021. With those funds, they will be finalized hopefully at the end of the year. If not, then the deadline is March 1st, 2023. So we're getting close to when everything will be finalized and this project will begin construction. So you can see in the box 2022 where we are right now, and they are working on just making sure their sources and uses are line up, and and making sure that the funding will take them to the finish line. They do intend to break ground next spring, and they will be finishing construction by 2025. Let's go to the next slide. Here we have all the public benefits that this project is going to provide to the community. There are so many things that they that they are going to include. Number one, I think of highest priority is going to be that daycare that they will have here. It will serve Spark residents and other low-income members of the community on a sliding scale cost. That is a major public benefit that will be seen here. It'll be about a $4,000 square foot space. They'll also have 5,000 square feet of neighborhood serving retail, a mid-block crossing right to the north of the building, and both public and private plaza space within the project. The building will have a high focus on sustainability. Their plans have been awarded Enterprise Green Community and Energy Star multifamily new construction designations. They also will be including structured parking, and they have included Davis-Bacon fair wages in their uses category of their budgeting. If you want to go to the next slide. As you can see from this, oh, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Vice
So
Chair.
in the
Let's
slide,
go back.
in the previous slide, there was a word there that I didn't know what it was. The last one, it says Davis-Bacon fair wages. What is this?
So Davis-Bacon fair wages is it's focused on, they will only use contractors and subcontractors that include local citizens of the area, and they are required to pay them a certain wage.
And those are a federal requirement per some of the funding that
Oh,
they got,
that's-
so it's fair wages through construction.
Much better than
essentially.
bacon, even. Thank you.
Yes, so they're going to be bringing home the bacon with that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
There you go.
What you can see from this is what the project looks like. You have that transit-oriented development with the tracks line going by the front of the building. They'll have that plaza on the street corner which should provide a lot of activity. Let's go to the next slide. You can see the commercial that will be fronting that tracks line on North Temple. It should really add to the walkability and the accessibility for residents of both this project and the surrounding area to local retail, which is exciting. You can see within the closer part of the green space that public plaza, and then just behind it the private residential courtyard area that will be a level up from the other area. Their focus on design and sustainability can really be seen in these images. Let's look at the next slide. Thank you. And once again, that retail fronting the street. It's just a great design for this area, and it was selected by some of you board members, and you get to live in the dreams of the others that have moved on from here. But let's go ahead and look at the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Corinne to continue the discussion.
Thanks. In this slide, we're going to dive a little bit more into the impactful unit mix of this project. And there's 200 total units with 63 family-size units, and 50% of those, or 100 units, are affordable to households at or below 60% AMI. This was a requirement of the 2017 resolution that the board passed when the agency purchased the parcel. In addition, 50% of the units are affordable to households between 70 and 80% AMI. This actually helps us reach another requirement that was in the resolution, that 50% were actually market rate. And the way this happens is because the 70 to 80% AMI is actually per LIHTC standards, which currently is actually market rate range for the neighborhood. So we get the best of both worlds with that, where we have 50% at market rate right now, but as the area continues to grow, they are deed restricted to preserve that affordability into the future. And this also allowed us to leave zero equity on the table. So we were allowed to use all 200 units in our application for LIHTC, and we received that significant award of $42.5 million for the North Temple area for this unit mix. And additionally, on the bottom there, to help humanize the AMI percentages and give some examples of the residents that will be able to be helped by this project, a single parent working 20 hours per week at Starbucks could afford a 20% AMI unit. And there's some example rents in there where a one bedroom would be $319, a 2-bedroom $380, a 3-bedroom $434, and a 4-bedroom $480. And these units are very similar to what you saw recently in your tour of the 255 South State building and project. Oh, next slide, please. I forgot I wasn't in control of the slides. Okay, so moving on to the funding sources. This is a high-level overview of how much has gone into the project, and you can see there's really no stone left unturned. There is city, RDA, state, and federal funding in this project, and the pie chart is just to help visualize the portions of funding that are in there. So that most significant piece at about 46% of project costs are the $42.5 million LIHTC award I just mentioned. The next largest amount is the permanent loan that the developer gets from the bank. That's about 29%. And then you'll see the green slices there are the RDA portions. So the first two, kind of on the top there, are the seller's note and the already committed NOFA funds that we'll explain a little bit further in a next slide. And then the remaining portion is today's proposed gap loan for $4 million. So our participation to date is in 2018, Kate briefly mentioned this, the project was awarded a NOFA for about $2.5 million. In 2019, it was $3.9 million, and these are all at 2% 30-year term cash flow, so it's about 6.4 total, and these are all paid back in full plus interest. And then the seller's note financing is proposed for $4 million, and that process was essentially established in 2018 in our predisposition report for how we would dispose of the property in this project. That's at 1.25% in a 30-year term cash flow as well. This is also paid back in full plus interest. And then finally, the gap loan request for today, which is $4 million, also at 2%, 30-year term and cash flow. And you'll notice this matches the NOFA funds that I just mentioned. This is largely for administrative function. It's much easier for us and smoother to have the same terms for all the funds going out the door, because these will be managed for 30 years. And the more streamlined and effective they can be, the better. But this loan is also paid back in full plus interest. Next slide, please. All right, so I think the first question that comes to mind is, if we're asking for an additional $4 million, what is the developer putting in? So we wanted to note the developer's contribution overall to the project. That first item notes they fund pre-development. This is about $1.6 million. This is very helpful because this is all risk that they assume that the agency does not have to take on. But a $3 million deferred developer fee. They have several guarantees and also are responsible for the commercial master lease. Kate touched on this briefly in her slides, but of course we're here because of the cost increases that we are seeing just nationwide. Unfortunately, our projects aren't immune to it, so that is essentially the reason behind the $4 million request. And then one thing that Bryn Shore took on once they started seeing those construction costs go up was how we could have some cost-saving measures within the project. And about $6.1 million in savings came through value engineering, with the removal of some pieces of the original project, such as underground parking, balconies, unit reconfiguration, and a reduction of some of the green roof space. They applied for and received additional funds, such as UHC increased basis and Olene Walker, and they've applied for philanthropic funds as well. Next slide, please. And we just have 2 slides left, but this is the main one for discussion, where for the $4 million gap request, agency staff worked with our accounting team to dive in and see where we could potentially utilize funds to fill this gap for this significant project. And as you can see in the chart, we have the fund, the program, the amount available, what could potentially go to the gap loan, and then what amount is remaining. And one goal of agency staff was not to completely wipe out any one account, so that there's still funds remaining for that program that it was slated for, but so that we could also fill this gap and kind of balance accomplishing everything. I did want to note that in 2020, the project cost was about 60 million, and our participation with the two NOFAs in the land note was about 10.4, and we were at about 17.5% of total project cost. Ours is actually for 2022, because the price has gone up to 93 million. If we were to include this gap loan, our participation is actually a little bit lower comparatively at about 15.5% for total development costs. And then finally, I think the question is always, well, what if we couldn't fill it or the board chose not to? And further value engineering is usually the next answer. And that could save us about up to 700,000 in additional savings, but that would be for the removal of some of the commercial, which I know staff, the developer, and the board aren't especially interested in, but that would be on the table as a way to reduce some of the costs additionally. And next slide, please. And this is our last slide. Essentially, Allison already touched on this, so we will today discuss that seller's note, and we're asking for final approval of that and a straw poll on the gap loan, and then that would give us the instruction we need to return next month with the applicable budget amendment, kick off that public hearing, and then return in November for final approval. And if we could go back to the previous slide, I feel like this is where we'll start the discussion today. The agency staff proposed those numbers that you can see in that gap loan column, about 1.5 from property acquisition, 1.5 from North Temple Strategic Intervention Funds, and 1 million from the fall NOFA, which will have at least 6 million remaining to issue an additional NOFA for affordable housing in fall. So that is pretty much our presentation, so we can open up to Q&A. We have Brinshore here as well, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies. That's a lot of information. My brain is like, wait, I had it all figured out earlier.
It's a complex project.
Anyway, but I'm excited for this project. We did go to Brinshore a few weeks ago for the one here, and I think most of us were pretty impressed with the product that we're getting, so I can't wait for this to happen in North Temple as well. I'm going to open this to discussion as if you guys have questions. So Petro first, and then Fowler. Okay.
So this is my district. Super excited. This lot has been heartache on the community Facebook page for a while. So seeing it resurrected like this will be super exciting. Can I make a pitch for, I don't know what stage this would be. We've been working with another project. This is a food desert quite significantly. And some of that retail space in there, even just a bodega size where a mom can send her kid down to grab, some milk and some bread, really will make a huge difference in this area. But I don't even have criticisms. I've gotten the chance to talk about this project in depth and love it. And thank you for modeling what North Temple is deserving of, which is that mixed income, mixed use, where we give people a dignified home, understand their comprehensive needs, and also understand that economic development has to go along with it. So thank you for creating that model for us to share out.
Great, thank you so much. And Brinshore is working with our Economic Development Department in Salt Lake Community College as well, and some local nonprofits on filling that space. So we can also put in a plug for a bodega as well.
Great. Fowler.
Thank you. I've been excited for this project since I first came on the council and we first got it. And I know that it's been through its own journey, this project, with LIHTC and tax getting all of the tax incentives and all of these things, and to not give up on it, and more importantly, to not change the design so that it lacks what we want. And we were just talking about this earlier, that so often with all of the prices going up, we have developers come in and say, okay, well, we can't afford it anymore, therefore we'll get rid of this thing. And the thing that goes away is the public benefit normally, right? Because what we're looking at is what people, I am assuming, are looking at is the profit in some ways, right? And I recognize they have to do that. But so often what is on the chopping block, and Darren was bringing this up in a conversation earlier with us, is that public benefit. And in as much as the prices are going up from 60 million to 93 million, we're not losing that public benefit, the thing that makes it so that Victoria can feel proud of something, so that at the very beginning when this came to us, we could say, heck yeah, like, let's do this tomorrow. How do we do this more? And how does this become the model of what we expect and want developers to look like within our city? So thank you, Bryn Shore. Thank you for being steadfast, Corinne and RDA, on these projects. Also, shout out, Corinne was very excited about this the other day, a majority female-led team. And Corinne said it herself. She was like, when you are a female in this world where the majority, like you're the minority in these projects, it's pretty awesome to see that piece of that as well. And I could go on and on about how grateful I am for this project, how excited I am, both for the one on 255 and for this one coming up. So with that, I would make a motion, Madam Chair, to approve the seller's note, and I can do the straw poll afterwards, but I'd make a motion to approve the seller's note.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Board Member Fowler, seconded by Pui, on the seller's note portion of this request. I'm going to roll call this. Petro,
Yes.
Dugan,
Yes.
Mano,
Yes.
Pui,
Yes.
Wharton,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So thank you, Corinne, for that, and everybody else that was involved.
And Madam Chair, if I may.
Please go ahead.
I also want to say, if I can go back to that, well, it's not on there anymore, but the slide about the creativity I appreciate from the RDA of not wiping out one of our accounts, but kind of finagling this together. But most importantly, the North Temple, what did we call that fund? The strategic plan. Like, this is what that was for. Right, this is exactly why 3 years ago or 2 years ago that we said, let's make sure, and James Rogers was a huge proponent of this, saying we have to have this money allocated there, and this is exactly what it's for, that gap financing, to say this is what we want on North Temple. So with that, I would make a straw poll to approve the gap financing as proposed by the RDA staff.
All right.
Second.
So, yeah, it's just a straw poll, so we need to see your feelings, so show your feelings. All right, so the feelings show that there's positivity towards this. I don't know how to say that, but that we would like this project to move on as proposed.
Great.
Madam Chair?
Yep, go ahead.
If I could just make a couple comments. I am really excited about this project as well. I think it does bring up a few sort of policy things that maybe we could think about. One thing that a lot of us that went to Cincinnati learned was that they have a model where one entity owns the retail space and another entity owns the residential spaces above. And I think that's something maybe we could look at for projects like this. Perhaps the RDA retains ownership of those commercial spaces and works with economic development so that we can handpick a great bodega that would be a benefit to the community, where we're not as profit driven as the developer may have to be. So I think that's one great thing. Second, I do get, I mean, I understand why it's happening, but it's frustrating to always have projects that come in over budget. And I wonder if there's a way that we can just have, if we approve financing for a budget, there's like the overrun account gets boosted up a little bit so that we know if there's a certain overrun, like that the overrun account is a little more robust for us to know that this is going to happen on half or most of our projects, and we choose to support the project, we're going to keep choosing to support the project, but that it doesn't always have to be this, like, you know, if I would be worried that if a future board doesn't support the project, then all of this time and effort and money has been wasted, and then it gets stalled because that gap can't get filled. So some way for us to have a more streamlined way to fill these gaps could be interesting.
Can I comment on that? Almost like a maintenance fund, like how
basically.
how we kind of a few years ago started saying, okay, here's the budget of the project, what's the ongoing maintenance, putting a percentage or putting something towards that maintenance fund, knowing that we're going to have to, and look at like our streetscaping, right? And knowing we are going to have ongoing maintenance costs, that maybe something that's a policy, to your point, that is a great policy question. Is there like a percentage we put towards an overrun account, knowing everything's going to go up, inflation's not going down?
Yeah.
It's inflation for a reason, not deflation. Okay.
But anyway, but I'm definitely supportive of this project and excited to see it happen on North Temple. So
Great, thank you so much, and we can take those back to the team and get them, see how we can get them incorporated. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Thank you. All right, we are moving on to, moving on to item number 4, which is informational about the Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone creation. And at the table, we'll have Kate Werrett, Lauren Parisi, and Danny Walls. And the Housing and Transit Reinvestment Zone, it's a new tool that the RDA may pursue. And there are some areas in Salt Lake City that we might be able to use that. So go ahead, Kate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you want to go ahead and pull up our presentation, Taylor. Great. So housing and transit reinvestment zones, very long term for, we know them as HTRZs. If you want to go to the next slide. What we see coming up here, this is where the current project areas are that we have within the city. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see by 2025, we're going to lose 2 of the central Salt Lake project areas. HTRZs provide us an opportunity to create a slightly different version of a project area. And in looking at this, we have some opportunity to potentially create these project areas within those areas where the others are not going to be present after 2025, and in other areas of the city as well. You want to go to the next slide? Okay, so what we see here is this new HTRZ tool was created in 2021 and refined quite a bit in 2022 with 2 different Senate bills that were passed together. They're known as the Act, so the HTRZ Act. And with them, they set up some objectives and also some requirements for these different project areas. I'd like to look at those requirements first. They're on the right side. First and foremost, these project areas need to be created around a transit stop. Depending on the different type of transit stop that it's located near, the requirements are a little bit different, and we'll look at that more later. But then they also have a requirement for a housing focus. You can see with the land use, 51% of the developable land within the project areas have to be residential. Within those, there has to be an average of 50 units an acre. And then they have requirements on affordable housing and a mix in unit types as well. So these project areas take our CRAs and kind of buoy them up with those items. And what you can see on the left side are the requirements that the state has in place for these. They're really looking at that public transit usage and boosting our housing throughout the city, really focused on that conservation through TOD, which is an exciting opportunity. Let's go to the next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, yeah.
What zoning does 50 units per acre most closely correlate to right now? Would it be like an RMF 45?
I think it's even denser than that. It's like D1, D. So it's 800 square feet of land per unit, and that's pretty small. Like think of a single family zone as 5,000 square feet, 7,000 square feet per unit. So it's like downtown type of.
Would we have to create a zoning to address this? Or
I'm not positive.
I'm always looking at Darren. These
I
questions.
don't know
sorry.
what's zoned right now as is. We might have to.
So they're different transit areas.
And depending
so
on
maybe,
what area, yeah.
Like a lot are GMU. We'd have to look at
or
that.
like a form-based for this.
Form-based might be
So,
some.
I mean, I think one location that this could be used is the granary, I think, was identified, and the current is general commercial, but the proposed form-based 3 that would definitely qualify. I would guess, but I mean, Ballpark Station is another one where I believe it could be used, and the zoning around Ballpark Station is not 50 units per acre, so.
Sorry, it was a sorry, that was it just came in.
Oh, that's a great question.
Good question.
So rezones may be needed.
Yes. Yes, that focus on housing will likely require, depending on where they get approved, would likely require rezoning. On this, we can see the state Htrz Act outlines eligible uses of these funds, and we put some of the higher priority items towards the top. Once again, housing, public infrastructure, property acquisition, and then general development items following after that. And then on the right side, you can see the different capture rates. It maxes out our tax increment collection at 80%. If this project area, if the Htrz project area happens to overlay another project area, an existing CRA project area, the maximum for that parcel to participate would be at that 80% level. And then 1% of that increment can go towards the CRA administration and the gap analysis that would be required per the state proposal requirements. Let's go to the next slide. So here you can see some of the different requirements based on what type of transit station the project area includes. With this, development standards vary dependent on the type of transit stop it encircles. There's differences in the distance from the stop that can be done, the amount of acreage that can be included, the term and phase length, and then the number of HTRZs allowed per county. So you'll notice with that front runner that the number of HTRZs allowed per county was not defined in the state act. Because of that, we're defining that to mean that there is no limit there. So that means that the intermodal hub doesn't have we're not in a race against other cities. We can do that as it is a priority without a concern of a limitation dependent on what other cities do. Then there's that limit of 8 at the tracks and S-line stations that's shown here. Let's go to the next slide. Taylor, thank you. So here we have the general process. In small groups, some of you asked who is included in the committee. You can see that list there. Shows you there will be one person from each of those different groups on the committee. So step 1 will be submitting the HTRZ proposal to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. They'll create an HTRZ committee that will review the proposal, and they will contract out a third party to do a gap analysis on the application itself. Based on their feedback, it will either be approved, modifications requested, or rejected. We anticipate them all getting approved, and then from there, the taxing entities will be required to participate at the rates that are approved by the HTRZ committees as part of the proposal review.
So this means that the school, and is that supposed to be school district or sound district? It says sound district.
School district.
Yes, okay.
The school district, yes.
So that means that the school district and the county, and will participate. If this is approved, they will not have to lobby them to get their increment. It will be just automatically applied. Okay.
That will be discussed as part of the committees. Okay. Yes, not as part of the RDA's interactions with the interlocal agreement. There will be an interlocal agreement. However, they won't be discussing participation when that is reviewed.
Board Member Mano?
Yeah.
You said you anticipate them all being approved. Is that because you're being optimistic and putting good vibes out, or because there's a reason to believe
I'm
that?
very optimistic.
Okay. Or if there was like a reason for us to think that was.
I am dreaming big on this one because there's so much opportunity.
I saw the smile, but I wasn't sure.
No, sorry. Let me clarify. I'm being optimistic. And yes, only one application has been submitted from any city within the state at this time. So we have yet to see how they will be reviewed.
And to that point, because there is 8 on the tracks line for the whole county, and there is one application submitted, we want to go as fast as possible. Is that the strategy here, is to try to get them right, but also fast, to make sure that we don't miss out on an opportunity, or what is the strategy? I guess it might be for us to decide, but I mean, what is your best advice on this?
Yes, we want to go fast, and we want to get it right. Now, something with the proposal is that we set the cap on how much tax increment can be collected when we submit the application to to the committee for review. So we need to get it right, or as close to right as we can.
Sorry, Madam.
Go ahead.
And I don't remember now. Are there any of those? Last time I saw this, there were circles. Now there is this like highlighted area.
We're going to get to that map.
Okay.
Yes.
And some of them overlap with current RDAs.
You want to go to
districts.
the next slide?
Okay, so I should be quiet, and you guys are going to touch on
Taylor,
this. then.
next
Thank
slide.
you.
There we go. There's your circles. Yes.
The question is, I guess, how does that work when we have the two entities that are doing the same thing, basically, that are taking the tax increment from all these agencies for redevelopment? How does that work when we are overlapping?
So with that, we are, the overall cap for any parcels is going to be 80% if they are participating in an HTRZ. So if a parcel is within, let's say, the State Street project area, and it's participating at 100% for the city's participation rate, then none of the city's tax increment could come to the HTRZ's portion. However, other taxing entities only participate at other levels, and so a proposal could be made that the difference between whatever their participation rate is and 80% be collected by the HTRZ. Or a phasing item could be considered so that, let's say, a CRA project area is going to expire in 30 years. The HTRZ could have a phase that doesn't come online until later on, so that a total of whatever maximum participation we want, we need to get the public amenities we're projecting and want would be collected there. So phasing, and then the difference between whatever their current participation is and the 80% could be done.
And I would also add to that, we can choose which parcels will be a part of the HTRZ, so it's not going to be everything within the circle. So once we have a better handle on the development that's coming in and we're understanding the overlap, maybe we choose parcels that are not in the overlap, just depending on kind of what needs support.
Yeah. As Lauren mentioned, the whole circle that will not be included. If you remember back to that table, there's a limit of either 125 acres or 100 acres per HTRZ project area. That means that we are going to have the opportunity to select parcels that we want to participate, where we're anticipating some kind of development to occur to give us the highest and best opportunity to collect more.
I have a question on the potential HTRZ. Would any of the North Temple stops qualify as well? I mean, maybe I'm thinking 800 West.
You are like reading my brain. I was like, I know I asked this.
Feel the vibes.
I asked this in our small group, and I can't remember why North Temple west of Redwood wasn't one of the possibilities right now.
So what we see here is these are the project areas that, based on feedback we've received as staff from internally and from developers, where there's the most interest. However, if there was another stop on this, it would be the North Temple area. And I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to talk about the specific project areas.
I was just going to add to that, Kate. To answer your question, the current North Temple project area pretty much incorporates already 3 of the 4 stops that are west of I-15. So you kind of already have a project area there. But I think to what you're alluding at is, if there is something that became available in the near future as a significant development opportunity, you do have the opportunity to pull that out of that project area and create a new HTRZ.
Well, and I think it would answer the concern that is developing, that we are once again inadvertently creating the communities we don't want by concentrating deeply affordable in places that are not going to be able to attract grocery stores and sustain healthy schools. And so it might be a tool, especially if we could convince developers to be on board with us for that, that would help combat some of that developmental angst that's developing in that area.
Yeah. But to answer your question again, when we looked at what our priorities were, it was the areas that we didn't necessarily have project areas already. So
Okay. Board Member Madden.
Just so I understand, the 650 South Main stop, say we chose that one, there's a lot of new development that's already happened there, so those properties would not throw off any increment, right? So we would exclude those, or because they're so new, is there a way to go back? Like, when does that, that seems like it would play into which ones we choose, because some areas have already developed to a point where the increment's actually gonna not be great.
Yeah, I don't think we can go back with the base year. We can go forward with the base year. I think, yeah, we just have to look at that, and we want to do kind of a financial analysis of what the tax increment will be that they'll spin off. Maybe they will be appreciating quickly, but it is kind of based on new development. So we just have to look at that and be strategic about the parcels we pick.
Got it.
Additionally, as part of the proposal, we will be defining the base year. So,
yeah.
And additionally, finding the base year and the timing of that puts the quick into the do it right and do it quick model of what we're working on here.
Right, that's a good point.
All right.
Okay, so I think we can move on. We have a few more slides regarding the specific HTRZ areas that we're looking at. So taking into consideration the state's requirements that Kate just discussed, as well as the city's objectives, staff has identified these 5 potential locations where this tool or really additional investment could be utilized to support, again, public and private catalytic projects. So I will provide some high-level details on each of these 5 areas right now. If we can advance. Oh, here we are. All right, so the first is the intermodal hub, and establishing an HTRZ around this hub is one of the RDA's top priorities to facilitate Station Center. But again, this doesn't necessarily need to be submitted to the state first because it doesn't count towards that 8 maximum within Salt Lake County. Tax increment collected here could be used for denser housing development that's so needed in such a transit-rich area, first and last mile improvements to get people to and from the transit stops, public infrastructure improvements, especially those for Station Center, the RDA's and UTA's development of Central Station, the Green Loop that runs down 5th West, a future tracks extension that could be a possibility, and ultimately promote better east-west connectivity. So there's a lot of catalytic type things in these areas that TI could partially support. Next slide. Next, we have the track station at 650 South Main. This project area encompasses the majority of the grand boulevards that run along 5th and 6th South. Tax increment here could be used to support the public infrastructure improvements needed for these grand boulevards, as was directed in the city's downtown plan. We've also received requests from private developers in this area. Next slide. Next, we have a track station at 9th South and 2nd West. This area covers a portion of the existing granary project area, but as Kate showed on those maps, the granary will be coming offline in 2025, and investment may be beneficial in this neighborhood. It encompasses the city's Fleet Block property, and here again, the TI could support a future tracks extension depending on where the lines end up. Next slide. Next, we have our ballpark stop. Here, tax increment could be used to support the ballpark itself, as well as the development that occurs on the city-owned lot to the north. Those 2 lots are highlighted in red there. And TI could also be used for public improvements to increase walkability and overall safety of the area. That's so important to the neighborhood. Next slide. And then finally, we have Sugar House, or utilizing one of the stops off the S line. And here, tax increment could support a tracks extension, and it could also be used to encourage more affordable housing in market rate type developments. So those are the 5 that we have looked at. Next slide. So some considerations that we've thought about and that the board may wish to consider is how can HTRZ creation be done in the most equitable manner, or really support areas, or which areas might have the most wide-reaching impact as opposed to benefiting certain neighborhoods. For example, allowing residents to live close to work and therefore improving air quality, offering affordable and family-sized housing units where there typically might not be, things of this nature. Another consideration could be what areas of the city need investment to support housing, transit, and public infrastructure specifically, as this is what the tool was created for. What areas of the city encompass specific sites where both public and private catalytic development projects are being planned. Specific project and financial gap information is needed to submit to the state, so we do want to have areas where projects are happening. Similarly, what areas of the city could leverage existing growth or other funding sources to make the greatest impact when it's reinvested into that area. Next slide. So looking at next steps, in order to obtain specific development and financial information that's required to submit to the state, the RDA is planning to release a request for information, or an RFI, around certain transit stops to better understand the private development that's being planned. And once we have this information, we will refine the specific parcels that are included in an HTRZ proposal and submit that to the state. So this is our plan, and we just wanted to bring this to you today as kind of an initial briefing, and we're welcome to taking questions or any feedback you have now.
Madam,
Go ahead, Dugan.
thank you very much. I appreciate this. And I'm going to go back to the Sparks program, which, has three big things we were pushing for. It's near a transit stop, it's got family housing, and it's got childcare. So not just affordable housing, but affordable living. And when I look at these stops here, they got it's already built in the transit stop. You add the affordable family housing, you add childcare or a clinic or, a food place. Now you have affordable living, and that really reduces the cost to a family to support their family. So I really want to make sure we press those issues. I know they're part of the RDA guidelines, so really need to focus on those so we're wrapping around that whole affordable living. But thank you very much for this presentation.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that this is a very interesting tool that was created, and I also think that beyond the housing, which is a very important goal of all of us, I think that the fact that we can find money for public infrastructure through this, and like big ticket items that are very expensive for us to fund in other ways, I think this could be a very good tool. It also is very interesting how it works, and I have opinions about that. But because we are not the ones who are necessarily lobbying for this, it's the developers are. But so it's a very interesting tool. I'm very curious on how it will work. But I'm sure that we're going to have to decide what do we want to see, and marry it with the developers' wishes. And I'm sure that some of them will want to do parking structures. I think I used that word in the last week too many times. But I want to say that we do have a lack of infrastructure in some parts of this within those circles that are very expensive to pay for. So I'm looking forward to find money for that, including housing, and including all the other goals that we need to meet. So thank you.
And I think, to add to that, I think also, we're going to have to decide how we do participate, or what do we use this tool for. And we all want a lot of different things. And we also ought to look at who's out there, who are the property owners, what are the plans. Like you mentioned, Danny, we need to reach out as well to see what else is out there already happening that we don't necessarily have to participate. So if somebody else is already doing affordable housing with different tools, you know, out there, then maybe we don't focus so much on that, but we do the infrastructure that it's badly needed in some of these areas and so on. So I'm excited for the tool and see how we can use it. And also I have that feeling that there is a little bit of an urgency in the terms of to set the baseline. So whenever we can get some more information, the sooner the better, so that we know what to do, you know, on how to move forward. Go ahead, Darren.
In a typical RDA project area, we can collect tax increment from that area, but if it's used for housing, it can be used citywide. Is that the same with this? And I apologize if you already said that and I didn't hear it.
No, we can't use.
Think so.
I don't believe you can. I think it's
So-
intended to be spent primarily within the TOD, and the reason I was hesitating is I was trying to remember the language. If it's specific to the statute, which I think it is, or if it references back to like RDA language, and I'm fairly confident that it's specific that you have to spend it within this TOD. That's the intention of.
Okay, so when you were mentioning the Sugar House area and that could spur affordable housing in that high opportunity area, that
I'll
is
double check the
true, that
language.
we would have to actually choose that station in order to invest in affordable housing on the east side in that area.
Yeah.
Or use our other funds.
Yeah,
Or
our
use-
other housing dollars.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense, thanks.
All right. Any more discussion to this? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much. That's awesome. So we're at item agenda number 5, report and announcements from the executive director. And maybe not, mayor, or no announcements. All right, thank you for being here. Report announcements from RDA staff. So Danny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 2 items just to update the board on, if I may. First is to announce that last week we did release our competitive NOFA of $6 million, so that is on the street. That is for our housing development loan program. As you know, as the board that approved our housing priorities, there are some thresholds now attached to this year's NOFA. The first is that we are requiring that all projects to be eligible have to include at least 20% of their units to be 60% AMI and below. So that's the initial threshold. Beyond that, there's one of 2 thresholds or both that they can continue to meet or have to meet. One is that they either have to have 10% of their units family-sized and affordable at that level, or they have to have 10% of their units deeply affordable, 40% AMI or less. So we've incorporated those priorities you have. It's on the street. We will hold a virtual session this Friday where developers will have an opportunity to come and ask questions. The deadline is October 24th, and any details can be found on our website if you want to refer people to that to apply. So available to answer any questions at any time if you have it or want to refer people to us. Second item is last week we also launched a survey opportunity for local business owners, nonprofits, and artists to help learn about their experiences in terms of leasing, owning, or improving spaces. This is part of getting feedback to inform how we want to come back to you as a board and revise our commercial assistance programs. We did an initial briefing to you a few months ago. So we also created English and Spanish web pages to host the information, put that out there in terms of getting people and stakeholders to respond and participate and engage with us as staff. And then you have a link of that survey on our website, and that is also gets you to not just this, but the Spanish-speaking one as well. So we would love it if you would help spread the word to anyone in your districts of participating in that. So when we come back to you as a board, we can have a discussion and incorporate that into what the final programs would be.
Danny, what's the deadline for the survey? When are you ending it?
Oh, that is a great question. I do not know that off the top of my head. I'm not sure we have a true deadline unless someone behind me is nodding emphatically. I feel it.
We'll keep it open. The reason why I ask is because we have newsletters, and so, but the September we just released most of us, so if we can add this to the October one, but we'll still be on time, like, it's not gonna be closed.
That would be good, yes.
Okay.
We
All
would be
right.
good with that.
Okay. All right,
Our
well,
updates, thank you very much.
thank you so much, staff and Danny. We don't have any written briefings, we don't have any consent, so we don't have a closed session as far as I know. So I think we are adjourned. Thank you.
And we'll be going into the work session in 10 minutes, so 35 after, or 11 minutes.